So today we're going to talk about standing strong, right? Advocating. We're going to talk about advocating for ourselves and for those around us. And I feel like at a young age, we all learn to advocate, right? We learn to advocate for our siblings when they're outside the house, and for our friends, and for those who don't have a voice. But sometimes it's hard to advocate for ourselves. Sometimes we lose our voice when it's time to advocate for ourselves. And so what I found, especially in my real estate practice, this happens a lot. So I'll have a client and they will say, Carla, my kids really want me to move to XYZ, but I want to move to B. And I don't want to cause any trouble. I don't want to stir up any conflicts. And I say to them, you have a voice, and what you need to do is say, I appreciate your help and I appreciate your opinion, but I've decided this is where I want to move to. This is what I want. And I am capable of making my decisions, and this is my decision, and I would love your support, but this is what I'm going to do. And so I run into that every day, and so hence our conversation today. And I'm hoping you leave here with two things. One, some new tools for your toolbox, right? To be able to voice your opinion. And two, a renewed voice to help others stand up for their voice and what they want in life. So with that being said, I'm going to bring up our panelists in just one moment. Our flow for today is I've prepared some questions that I'm going to go and ask your panelists for you. So if you have a question during this time, if you could write it down on that sheet, on your note sheet, that way you'll remember it, because if you're like me, I'll forget it by the end. So write down your question, and then I'll open it up to questions at the end for the audience, okay? So let's welcome our panelists. Come on up, guys. Is the hearing okay with the mic? I put it in a new place, so I want to make sure. Good. So we have three great panelists. I'll let them get settled in. And we'll turn on their mics for them. The mics work best if you hold it, just hold it straight to your mouth. You can turn them off and on as you need to if you want here. So to start off with, I would love each of you to just briefly introduce yourself, share what advocacy means to you, and how you advocate for yourself or others in your professional or personal lives, either way. So Rebecca, you've been with us before, so you're probably pretty comfortable up there. Let's start with you.
Good morning, everyone.
Oops. Is it on the top? There you go. You got it.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. My name is Rebecca Crawford, and as Carla said, I'm a senior care transition coordinator with St. Croix Hospice for the last 6 years. And throughout my career as a nurse, I've been enjoying being able to advocate for people, help them when they maybe least expect needing the help, for sure. So we oftentimes see people in a crisis situation, so it's great to be able to lean on someone who has that information. And my experience as a 20-year-old was with my father, who was 60 at the time, who was diagnosed with prostate cancer. And before he was actually diagnosed, though, he got a false negative PSA. He was still having symptoms, but he was just a simple diesel mechanic. He didn't advocate for himself. He didn't talk about what was going on with his symptoms. So he just did what the doctor said, come back in 6 to 12 months. So he did that, and it was already spread to his bone. So the doctor said, well, there's really nothing we can do besides a little bit of radiation. So he passed within a year and a half, and it just seemed like there was not enough knowledge at my young age. I knew that that was something that I needed to help others with. So that's really what set the stage for my life in healthcare. So it's been a real great silver lining.
Good morning.
Okay, step one, make sure the technology is working. So good morning, my name is Pam Railsback, and I'm with the Long-Term Care Ombudsman's Office, and worked for this office for 18 years, and nobody knows what that means, so don't feel bad. Nobody can even say the word. And anyway, I usually just say ombudsman. It's just a fancy word for advocate. And I do provide advocacy services to folks living in long-term care, hence long-term care ombudsman. So nursing homes, assisted living, residential care facilities, I make visits to all of those facilities, and I'm not necessarily in the regulator role, but more of, hey, okay, what are the concerns and what can we do to try to work through those? So a lot of conversations with management, conversations with loved ones about their wishes, conversations with the residents when they can participate to find out what their wishes are, and make sure that their rights are being upheld. So it's been really gratifying to me to, make people feel better wherever they're living, make sure that their wishes are being respected, and nobody wants to go to a long-term care facility, but if they have to be there, it's really nice that I can help make sure that they're having the best experience possible. So I don't have any personal stories like Rebecca does, but I guess advocacy, I have a son who's 14, and he's needed some dental work lately thanks to a basketball injury, but just advocating for, people in your family, as we all do, asking questions. I feel like there's so much, a lot of times people don't know what question, you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know what to ask. So asking a lot of questions really helps me kind of wrap my head around, like all the procedures that we had to go through and all that stuff. So don't be afraid to ask questions, whether it's about yourself, when you're at an appointment, or if it's for a loved one. Getting more information will help you make the best informed decision, whatever is best for you or for your loved one. So, thank you.
Good morning, I'm April Neudorf, and I have mild cognitive impairment. So I have had to kind of be an advocate for myself, and it's tough because you're taught to not question doctors, but it is really important that you do, or that you advocate for your loved one. If you have a loved one that you're working with and they have to go somewhere, you want their needs met and their questions answered, like Pam said, and it's important to get those questions answered. So welcome. I'm just glad I'm here to talk to you guys today. So thank you.
And April also is a dementia champion. So last month when we talked about dementia, and we talked about Dementia Friendly Iowa, she's a dementia champion. So she goes out into our community and educates others, educates businesses on how to interact and to make everyone feel welcome. So she's doing a lot in our community. So we talked about what advocacy means to each of you, right? So I want to talk a little bit about a professional role. I'm getting a little back there. So Pam, can you share about a time when maybe a family member or a person living in long-term care has called you and they weren't happy with a condition or an interaction, and how you worked to advocate them through that experience?
Sure. The experience I'm thinking about was someone was over at skilled nursing rehab, and she was there because she just had a surgery and she was going through the rehab program. And I think understanding expectations is key. Moving from a hospital setting to skilled nursing, it's going to look a little different. So, as far as, I get a call from someone and their stress level's way up here and they're really upset, and why isn't mom getting 2 hours of therapy per day? And why doesn't the call light system have like a intercom in the room to let them, so she can let them know, hey, I need a box of Kleenex. And so level setting expectations, like most places don't have that kind of a setup. It'd be really cool if they did, but they don't. And as far as therapy in a skilled nursing facility, it's going to look a little bit different from the hospital setting. So just kind of educating on the therapy. And at this juncture too, she was kind of upset because they were saying mom had to go on Friday. She had to leave, that she exhausted like her skilled nursing benefit, and they felt like she'd made enough progress and she was ready to go. So it was panic mode. She said, we're not ready to go. We're going to appeal this decision, which, as far as rights go, you can always appeal a decision if Medicare decides that your skilled nursing stay is done. So no, you have that option. So they had already initiated the appeal. I said, hey, why don't we have a meeting? So I went with her, with the family members, with the resident. We had therapy come in, we had nursing come in, and we talked as a group. Like, okay, here's how your mom's progressing with therapy, and this is where she's at. They were concerned because she has stairs at her home. So they were worried about, Mom just had the surgery, are you guys even working on stairs? So it was good to hear, yes, we've been working on stairs and we have some ideas. And so we talked about, they can offer a home visit at this, skilled nursing facility. They could the therapist go with the person to their home, have them practice walking up the stairs, getting in and out of the bathroom, getting in and out of the tub, identifying like, oh, you might need a bath bench to make things a little easier for you at home, or some adaptive equipment to make their stay at home more successful. So all of that was done. Everybody felt way more comfortable about the discharge plan, and they did feel comfortable about going home on the day that the skilled nursing facility stay was ending. So they were all set up with, outpatient therapy. So again, looking towards the future, the skilled nursing facility can set up, appointments that are needed moving forward, made that referral for ongoing therapy. So there was a plan for continued therapy while the gal was at home, which, everybody wants to go home. And it is scary, after a surgery and having the rehab to be going home and be told, oh, you have to go home on Friday. Definite panic mode. But after kind of talking it through, making sure that all their questions were answered and that there was a plan, everybody felt way more comfortable. So I did follow up with them afterwards, and things were going great. The stairs that they were so scared of, it was going fine. So everything worked out. So that was definitely a win.
So it sounds like setting expectations and communication are really a large part of what you do in that mediation role, right? So that gives us a really good overview of what it looks like professionally advocating for someone. And now we're going to move on to what it looks like on the everyday life. So when you go to a doctor's office, I think April said earlier, we're taught not to question the doctor, right? We all grew up in that role. I worked in the healthcare field for almost 20 years, and I still grew up at that role and still feel that way. But right now in our medical system, it's a rush system, and they only have so much time. And so let's talk about some key phrases that we can use to draw attention back to, let's say our appointment's over and the doctor's ready to move on, but we have some questions or we don't fully understand. What are some key phrases that you have used or that you feel like people could use to help with that situation? Anybody want to start that?
I'm going to start. So, as I'm aging, I'm only in my 5th decade, but I notice things changing. And so I may ask, help me understand, what to expect at this age. We can do reading, we can get on Google and look at symptoms that we may be having, but our physicians and nurse practitioners may be the ones to put it all together and make recommendations in our own community. They may have resources across that medical community. So helping me understand what should I expect and maybe getting a more specific professional to help with whatever symptom may be going on. And unless we really voice what our symptoms are, the doctors don't know that. So if you're having weakness, but you're still getting around and doing those things for yourself, but you're noticing changes, please speak out on behalf of yourself. So I also know that having a piece of paper with you to write things down, because when they're talking to us, it can be very overwhelming, or having someone with you to help know what was said as you're talking about different things that may come up that might not be expected. Thank you.
Anybody else have anything to add to that? Experiences you've had when trying to advocate for yourself with a doctor or phrases?
Yeah, I would say to stay calm and try not to let emotions get the best of you while you're visiting the doctor and trying to get some information out of them. It's hard to do because it's all emotional, but if you can stay calm, you can kind of slow down and get out what you want to say. Sometimes if you start to cry or get real upset, you just forget about some of that stuff. So this will allow you to hopefully get more words out and just tell them I just need some additional help.
Need some additional information and I'm not quite right understanding this. So often, we also feel like we're being passed, from one department to another. I don't know if you guys had this experience where you're trying to get some support, some information, and you feel like you've just been kind of passed from department to department and not, oh, let me get you this over here and they can help you. But you're not getting that support you need. So, some of communication is what I think I'm voicing to you may not be what you're hearing, because we all communicate differently, right? We all have our own perceptive communication based on our past and what we hear. And so how would you advise our audience to clearly communicate their needs? Any key phrases to get that closed loop when you're trying to get the support? Not necessarily the doctor's office, but just in general when we're calling different places.
I would say for sure, making sure you're talking to the right people. Sometimes people ask questions, and at least from a long-term care perspective, like maybe they're voicing a concern to the CNA, the person who's providing the care at the moment, and they think like, oh, I've passed along this concern. Well, maybe that information doesn't go to the right person in management who needs to know about that concern. So, and a lot of times it's not intentional. It's not like, oh, I'm doing a bad job and I don't want to share. It's because they have 20 people on their call that they're trying to help, and they're running from one place to the other, and it's usually not intentional at all. So just making sure you're talking to the right place, right person. Sometimes there's a process too if there's a concern. So again, just making sure you're getting directed to the right people, whoever it is that might be able to meet your need.
I was just going to add, thank you, Pam, not to be afraid to have them say something in more simple terms if you're not quite understanding what they are saying. Can you please simplify that in layman's terms versus medical terms? Because, something that we do every day just kind of slips off of our tongue, and people may not understand that. If someone is talking too fast, please ask them to maybe slow down and restate what they had just said, because I can't always understand if someone's speaking too fast myself, and you miss important pieces of information. So just, can you please restate that?
Some great advice. What else would you add as far as everyday tools that people can use to directly advocate for themselves, or things they can start using, like the notebook you mentioned? I think that's a great tool. Any other tools that you would say for advocating or having a plan in place for advocating?
Just like the support groups, being able to talk with other people who may be experiencing the same types of things and getting those resources at your fingertips, and then being able to share, personal information if you feel comfortable with that, will help guide you guys and get those testimonials from other people who have experienced it.
And maybe if you're advocating for someone else, just knowing what their wishes are so that you can make the best, most informed decision, knowing that I know that mom would have wanted this, or my sister would have wanted this, depending on who you're advocating for. Just knowing their wishes kind of makes, when you have to implement a decision, it makes it easier.
So sharing those wishes, sharing what you want with your loved ones as well, so that they have that information, so they can be your advocate if need be. And sharing it with a good friend, with anyone, someone that you think has a strong voice for you. So I know we have some caregivers in the room, and we find that oftentimes caregivers wait a little bit too long to get the support they need. We've all had these conversations. What are some signs that we can look for that it's time for us to get some help and to bring in that outside support, and what boundaries can we set for that?
This can be very challenging as a caregiver, because that guilt tries to get in your head, and you're like, oh my goodness, I shouldn't be selfish, worrying about myself. But if you're feeling, or a caregiver is feeling just unable to concentrate, if they're not sleeping well, they're really not taking care of themselves as they're caregiving, that may be a sign. And sometimes you have to lean on your friends and family to observe and tell you it's going to be okay to take that step for yourself. And then looking at different things in your personality that maybe didn't used to upset you, but now you're just on edge all of the time. We see that a lot with caregivers. And then knowing that sometimes if you're not taking care of yourself, you're not going to be able to take care of anyone else. So it's a serious topic for caregiver burnout and caregivers needing to reach out for other resources.
I would say if somebody offers the caregiver some help, like an outside person, like one of their friends or a colleague, something like that, take their help and just say, oh, that would be great. Like they say, do you need help going to the grocery store? Just give them a list and say, go to the store for me, and that would be helpful. And try to get yourself some respite. And we've got places that are around Cedar Rapids that will allow your loved one to go there depending on what their needs are. And if they're, I guess they have to meet some criteria, but that gives the caregiver a break. And you guys really do need a break and support because you need to take care of yourselves before you take care of anyone else.
It's a great answer, great advice, because, you know, sometimes being a caregiver is finding them the right care to support so that you can go back to being a spouse, a friend, a daughter, a son. Sometimes that's the best caregiving that you can provide. And I know that during our meeting you shared stories. I think Rebecca, you shared a story about it when you're a caregiver, and you and I had the same story. When my dad, when we were caring for my dad, my sister did the financials and I did the medical. Well, my dad had a lot of time. He was out in the country and he didn't drive much anymore, and he liked to check his bank account every day. And every day he got locked out of his bank account. So every day he called my sister and she would, you know, get him back in that bank account. And I think Rebecca, you said you had the same thing. And there is a great device called a GrandPad. And I did bring some information on it at my back table there. But it is a device where it only has access to things like your bank account or FaceTiming certain people, and then certain apps for brain stimulation. They set it up. But it also has this amazing support to where your loved one can call them anytime. Even if they just need to talk to somebody, they can call them. So if they lock out of that bank account, which they shouldn't because it has the one button into the bank account, but it sets them up to where they won't get spammed, right? They're not going to get all these fraud attacks. And it's just a great device. And it's fairly inexpensive monthly. And so I did put some information. I had them send me some information, some updated, so I put that back there because I wish that I would have known about it because I would have bought my dad one. You know, I think he would have enjoyed it. We could have visited about other things than his password. So we've talked about these systems and policies. Let's hear more about what advocacy feels like for you when you're the one being advocated for. So April, if it's not too personal, how have you learned to advocate for yourself through the diagnosis? And I'll ask you a second part question after you answer that.
When I started out having issues with my thinking, I talked to my doctor. That was the logical thing for me to do, and ask her if I could be tested. She said, "You don't need that. You're just tired. You're just too young for that." So I said, "Okay." So being the good kid that I was at the time, I just went home and didn't question the doctor. So then it got to be 15 years later, and I still hadn't been tested to see if I had dementia. And finally, I said, if you're not going to test me, I'm going to have to find somebody who will. And I said, I just want to know. I'm not going to do anything with the information, but I just want to know. I know there's a reason for me. I just couldn't, I was always in finance, and so I couldn't do numbers anymore. And so I had to leave my job, and I didn't want to just think I just all of a sudden was stupid, so I got tested, and yes, I had dementia. And she said, I'm really sorry. And so I got tested at Mayo, and they also said I didn't have anything because I was too young. And I can't believe it. I just couldn't, and I do have dementia. And so it's dementia is the umbrella term, of course, and then I have mild cognitive impairment. That's the main thing, and that allows me to not always, like when I'm doing a recipe, I skip over steps or ingredients. That's that. But I like to bake, so my husband has to help me. We make, lasagna, and I'll skip steps in that if I'm doing it by myself, even though I can check it off, I'll check off something that I haven't done. It's just, I just have a different way of thinking now, so it's just really important, for me to always have learned to question the doctor now, and I do, and no such thing as a stupid question. People say that, everybody thinks they're talking about you if you do ask us a question, you might be dumb, but chances are somebody else will ask it if you don't. So there's no shame in that at all, because you just want to take care of yourself and take care of your loved one as good as you can. So nothing wrong with that.
Thank you for sharing that. So I'm glad you kept listening to your intuition, your gut feeling. I think that we don't listen to that enough in life because it's there for a reason, and you kept listening and you kept on it. So because of you, that doctor will pay for the next people. I hope that she'll learn that lesson and she'll take the next person more seriously.
She has learned that lesson, because I went back and told her, "Did you see the thing from Mail?" And she said, "No, I haven't seen it yet." And I said, "I do have dementia." She goes, "I'm so sorry." And I said, "I knew there was something wrong." And I said, "I'm also the customer, and customer's always right." So
I like that. That's a key phrase for your doctor. Customer is always right. So, April, I know you had some good friends. I'm sure that some did stay with you through your whole journey, but I know some have been really there for you. What actions or what phrases, how have they been there that you feel like they've advocated for you and supported you?
Well, like she says, I've lost some friends, and that's really sad, because we need friends at this point. And, you always need friends, obviously, but when you don't know where to turn, you might just want to talk to somebody, and so it's sad to lose friends. But the ones that have stuck with me, I've told them, I'm going to change, but I want you there if I can, and they're like, "Yep, they'll stay by me." So I've told them, if there's something that my husband needs help with, please help him. Don't think of what I want, think of what's best for me. So, and support him in that when he's deciding. And so I have 3 good friends that said they'll do that. So I'm hoping so.
That's great. That's great that they're being there for you. Because our friends change, whether it's through medical or just life. So being there for them and being in their reality and what their current position is
And then
so
that
important.
takes my kids out of the equation. They don't have to decide anything either. So
they can just be kids. They can just be there and enjoy those times together. You guys have shared some powerful experiences. Are there any other scenarios or stories that you would like to share that you think would help people to be able to advocate for themselves?
I was just going to share, I think just preparing for the future is so important. We can't best care for each other if we don't know what the goal is. So knowing in different circumstances what you would prefer if you got in a car accident and needed to be in the hospital for an extended period of time, where would you like to go for that rehabilitation if you have options? Usually you do have options. So just remember, just because the doctor and the medical team is telling you about one place, there may be more options that would be better suited so that your family could visit, or that you would just prefer. Making sure that you talk about living will topics. If you had a major stroke and maybe could not feed yourself, would you want a feeding tube for the rest of your life or just for a trial period? There's certain topics on that living will that aren't easy to talk about. Nobody wants to talk about those end of life discussions, but it's so important to be able to honor wishes and to be able to honor your loved one's wishes. So having those conversations early, and they can be changed. So just know that if you think about something right now, but maybe your health or an illness, chronic disease comes about, you can't change your preferences.
April and I were talking earlier about how she's kind of doing some work now in preparation for if at some point a long-term care facility is needed, that you're kind of getting some information, and I feel like knowledge is power. You're seeing what you like, you know that you like to be active and go somewhere hopefully that has entertainment and things that you would like to do. So I feel like that's really important too, if you can do any of that planning, so it's not like oh no, we've had an emergency situation, we're in the hospital, and now all of a sudden we have to make a quick decision on where to go. You'll kind of have a little information and be prepared. So that's always helpful. I have a lot of people call my office too in those situations to say, I need a list. Like the hospital says there's just 3 places. I know there are more than that around. And to Rebecca's point, sometimes the hospitals do just say, they have certain places that they know will take people, and maybe it will or maybe won't be the best for you. But if you want more information, please, you can always call my office. I'd be happy to kind of talk through, what the costs are, or if there's people on Medicaid, some places accept that, some places don't. So kind of knowing too, financial wise, what you might be set up for. I'd be happy to talk to people about that. But knowledge is power, and preparation, like you said, just doing what you can up front. So when you're faced with an emergency, you kind of have a plan. That helps.
Thanks, Pam, for that segue, because I haven't said it this month, to have your plan A and your plan B. Like I do every month, we have to have our plan for our best laid plan. This is what we want. And if we have to have a plan B, we have our plan B in place, and to go ahead and make sure someone knows about both of those plans. So that's what I'm big on. So thank you for sharing that. Also, there's websites you can go on and look for ratings. Is it lifesite.net, I believe?
Medicare too.
I'm sorry, Medicare. And Medicare says about a year old, I think, but not too bad. It's just 6 months, 6 months behind. So not too bad, it's pretty up to date. So if you need to look at ratings, you can look online for those. So if you had, with one piece of advice, let's say our audience leaves today and they took one step to advocate for themselves or their others, what would you tell them? What one piece of advice, one step, one action plan? Rebecca's ready to go.
I always like to think, okay, what is the one thing that is on my mind and will not leave my mind unless I take care of it? So if there's something regarding your health or something that you just haven't shared with other people, please take care of that. So getting the right answer for whatever's on your mind constantly.
Listening to your intuition.
Just know that you're not alone, and there's support groups and other professionals and friends and people maybe who've gone through what you might be going through. Ask for help, ask for input. You're not alone. There are people out there to help give input or support if you need that. So just know you're not alone.
I think maybe just asking questions, but everybody said that. So, I think just don't give up and ask questions and stick up for what you want to believe in and what you want.
Great advice. So let's open it up to some audience questions. Do you guys have any questions? And I forgot to assign a mic runner. Is there an extra mic at the back? If not, I'll run mine.
Being new to Cedar Rapids, I don't know your organizations at all. Can you tell me who you are and what you do as an organization?
So I'm Rebecca Crawford, and I work with St. Croix Hospice. So we're a hospice company that serves 6 counties around Cedar Rapids and Iowa City. And we have 16 different locations in Iowa to serve 86 counties. And so we help people know what to expect at end of life and serve them wherever they call home. We don't have our own hospice house, but we will serve them in assisted livings, nursing homes, their own home. So that answer everything. Thank you.
Pricing on hospice, how do you?
That is an excellent question, and I can't say enough good about the benefit. So hospice, if you have Medicare or Medicaid, is covered 100%. And most private insurances have some type of hospice benefit in it. And so our intake department runs those private insurance, and we work with most insurance companies. If they're not in network, we will not turn people away. We'll still either look for a way to work with the insurance company or an insurance company that will pay 100% for them.
Thank you. I can't say enough good things about hospice too, and I feel like maybe there's a stigma with hospice, like you feel like you have to be, at the end of the life, but I've seen so many people, long-term care, be on hospice for maybe 2 years, and then they graduate and go off of hospice, but like there's so many really cool benefits, like music therapy, massage therapy, like really great like opportunities to enhance your life. So I can't speak well enough about hospice. Any providers, a lot of the providers are great, and they do really great service. So thanks. I'm glad you're here. But again, Pam Railsack. I work for the state of Iowa within the Department on Aging, and long-term care ombudsman is my title. Again, fancy word for advocate. All services with my office are free. Everything's confidential. I do have a lot of phone calls with people who they just say, I just need to talk about this, and they just kind of unload, and sometimes I can kind of help them like streamline what questions or what issues are really going on. I think as a caregiver, sometimes you can just get so overwhelmed and so stressed, and then when you talk about what's going on, it's like, it's hard to pinpoint like what are my concerns. So after kind of listening to someone, I always take notes because I don't write things down, I don't remember. So, but I try to drill down, okay, it sounds like have a question about this. Maybe there's a concern about this. And here's some tools that you can use to be an advocate for yourself. I wouldn't be a very good advocate if I didn't teach people how they can advocate for themselves or for their loved ones. So I always try to give, empower people to, hey, ask questions. Have you talked to the grievance officer? Did you share your concern with the right person? Because 85% of the time they haven't. They talk to the CNA and they know it's a problem. Well, probably the right person doesn't know. So I try to give that advocacy advice, educate them too on what their rights are and how they can advocate for their loved one. And if they need additional support, I'm certainly here to back them up. So, so I hope that answered all the questions. Thank you.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask what she reported to in her organization. Do you have others under you?
So we have 8 local ombudsmen throughout the state, and between all of us, we serve all of the counties in Iowa. So I have 2 counties. I go to all the assisted living, nursing home, and residential care in Lynn and Johnson counties. So it's like 80 facilities. So usually my concerns are complaint driven, based on the calls coming in and like meetings that I have to have, with people to kind of investigate concerns or try to come up with a plan to resolve. So I am a lead worker in my office, but it's probably just because I've been here for so long. So I do kind of offer some mentorship to some of our other staff. But we do have a staff person assigned to all of the facilities in all of Iowa. And because, we work for the state, we don't have a lot of money for marketing. I should have brought up my poster. So in each facility, there's like a picture of the ombudsman along with like the phone number. So you're welcome to look for the poster. It is required by state that they post that. So then that way it's, you got a face, who you're calling, and that number is available for anybody who might have a question about long-term care or question about rules or question about like, I don't know if this is a problem, but let me run this through you. So I do a lot of talking and confidential conversations, and maybe they don't go anywhere, and that's totally fine. I love being able to provide information and give people the tools that they need to kind of resolve whatever concern might be going on.
So we were pretty lucky to get her for 2 hours during the week. She's a busy lady. What other questions do you have?
My question's for April, and I just wondered, when you told your kids, or did they have an idea, and what is it like for them? And like, do some of their friends come over to their house? Do you have difficulty with that?
My kids are grown, first off. They're so but my oldest daughter accepted it right away when I told her. My younger daughter, I have 4, so the oldest, and then the next one is a daughter, and she doesn't see what I do or what I forget, but and not necessarily what I forget, but what I just do differently, because I put things in place so I don't forget so much, like being at this place. It's not the average, it's not my everyday thing to come to something like this, so I have to put something in place at home so I don't forget. And forget my husband, he's just, he doesn't remember very well either, and his is just him. So, but, I just have to, I had to stress to my daughter, I do forget things, but I write them down so I don't forget. And I made a bunch of bread because I'm involved in I'm involved with the Hiawatha Public Library, and we have a bake sale. I made a bunch of bread, didn't put something in there, so I had a bunch of really hard loads of stuff that I threw away, but because I forget things, so I just kind of have to remind them. And then I've got twin boys that they're just the one that's here in town he knows that I forget things and he'll say things to me about it, but they really don't. I don't know, they're not really affected by it because they're older. And my grandkids, though, my oldest daughter told my grandkids that she has 3 of them, and then my other daughter has 2. And she told them, Grandma's got some problems. And one day my grandson was over at my house and he says, Grandma, I can help you with lunch if you want. And I said, well, thanks. And he goes, because I know you might be dead soon. And I just looked at him, I said, Conyers, I'm not going anywhere. So funny, but, his heart was in the right place. So, yeah, it does make them want to spend more time with me though, but not my kids. They're still busy and they're living their lives and I can't fault them for that. So, but they do come over and we do stuff sometimes, but not as often as I'd like. But I know everybody says that.
So how April became a panelist is we've known each other for a while. We're both on a dementia-friendly board through the Innovation Center. And she called me and she said, Carla, I didn't know you had this program. I want to come to it next month. And we talked for a couple of minutes and I said, do you want to come as a panelist? And so here she is, her first time being here. So thank you for that because I kind of snuck that into our conversation with her. What other questions do we have? Craig? Come back for you.
I would just direct this at the panelists. You kind of touched on it a little bit before, but last year, some of this group already remembers that we had an attorney come in and talk about getting powers of attorney. Maybe talk about the importance of really possibly your biggest advocate, which is your medical power of attorney, and why that's so important in the decision-making process and communicating those wishes. I think, Megan, I think you had touched on it early on, but I think that would be good for this group as a motivator for those people that don't have that done already, to talk about the importance of it.
Great point. Rebecca, go ahead.
Thank you for making mention of that, Craig. I could talk about kind of what I do all day long, and then you start trying to not take up all the time. But for power of attorney, that simple term is kind of who you would appoint as your financial person to take care of different financial needs or payments when you're unable to do so for yourself. And that can be done by having a lawyer draw that up. And for a medical power of attorney, that person would make decisions for you when you're no longer able or deemed unable to make decisions for yourself for whatever reason. So that person can be legal next of kin. That person could be someone that will honor your wishes, so it doesn't have to be a relative or anyone that you're related to. But if you draw up the advanced directives, which would state whether or not you want to have CPR or would like to just pass naturally DNR, or if you'd want to have artificial nutrition. So there's different topics in that, and then you can appoint more than one person for each role. So if that person is not able to be that person, you could have the second person take over. So talking with your physician about the medical power of attorney, a social worker, notaries can sign that, I believe, for the medical power of attorney. There are forms online. And we actually have a lot of information about advanced directives. I don't have it here with me today, but if you'd like to have me send that to you or get that to you, my cards are on the back table as well. But again, that is an important piece of information to have when you can't make those decisions for yourself. Anything else I left out, Craig or Pam?
You covered it pretty well.
I have a question in addition to what just Craig asked. I have found that you know, there are people that will have the medical power of attorney, but they will not submit it to their doctors or to the hospital. And just like our drugs can get really messed up between what the doctor says and what the hospital says, the same thing can be said about your medical directives. So, what are your recommendations for everyone to make certain that those documents get in the correct hands?
Thank you for pointing that out. So when someone goes into the hospital, one of the questions they'll ask is if they have advanced directives and who is your legal next of kin or who has power of attorney over healthcare. That power of attorney for healthcare can sign consents for procedures. It's very important if that patient is going to have some type of procedure that would need that consent signed. So that's why usually the social worker in the hospital or the case manager would ask for that documentation. So I would advise always carrying that with you, just as you do for your medications, or giving that copy to your doctor's office so they can upload it into whatever hospital system you associate with and have a copy on file at the hospital and doctor's office.
It's good advice. We did that, and then we also, as my siblings and I had those duties split between us, so all of us had digital copies that could very easily be sent to wherever they needed to go. So we had them in our email, we had them in our Google Drive, so we could just shoot it over to the doctor's office. If there was a problem, we didn't have to be there. But that way it was always available. So, and I think we tried to keep one in my dad's wallet, but that doesn't always, it's kind of a larger document. But we had lots of copies everywhere. And we took them to every doctor we could think of.
Perfect. With that too, if you guys are traveling or snowbirds, having your social security number available for others is very important. A lot of times people don't know where to find that, so having it somewhere or someone that knows. So if you're out of town and you needed to go to the hospital, that information is super helpful, as well as your insurance cards, Medicare, so that those payments can get where they need to be. And even though they tell us not to use our social security cards, hospice does still require that. And I don't know if the hospital per se has to have it, but a lot of times they'll ask for it as well.
What other questions do we have?
I have one more sidebar on the power of attorney
Yes,
documents.
please share. And I'll
Just make sure that you read it so you know like when it's active. There have been so many times when people are like, well, I have this document, so I'm the decision maker, but you read in the very last paragraph that says, this document's only activated upon my doctor's signature or determination that I'm no longer able to make decisions. So just be sure to read it, because sometimes there can be, maybe some legalities, another box that needs to be checked before that document is actually activated, like triggered and ready to go. So, and on the advocacy piece too, I do talk to a lot of residents who maybe aren't happy with decisions that their decision makers are making when they live in long-term care. So if you ever hear of any concerns like that, you can sure point them my way, and I can outline their rights as far as changing that or revoking the document or whatever the wish might be. So
Yes, it can always be changed,
Yes.
right? It can always be changed as long as we can still make this. And from my viewpoint, from real estate, that document ends upon death. And so from my medical experience, whenever we had a patient pass away, the power of attorney is no longer valid from that point on. And then for real estate now, it's not valid, because a lot of times I'll have kids that'll want to use it for a probate, and I said, well, we have to go through a different system. So that power of attorney ends upon death.
When is an I-post appropriate?
An I-post is an Iowa physician order for scope of treatment. And again, it kind of goes over your wishes. The I-post is something that you should keep on your refrigerator if you do have one. It'll talk in sections. Do you want to have CPR or do you want to be in do not resuscitate? Would you like comfort measures, meaning please just manage my symptoms at home, do not take me back and forth to the hospital for those symptom management? Would you like intermediate interventions, not full measures where you would go to the ICU and have everything done to keep you alive? Or would you like full treatment? And then there's a section for artificial nutrition, maybe just a trial period, no artificial feedings. And then it is signed by either yourself or your medical power of attorney, or legal next of kin if that hasn't been situated, majority of adult children. And then it has a rationale. Why are we doing this? And is it just for advanced directive needs? Is it because my prognosis is poor or a life limiting illness? But if you have that on your refrigerator and you're somebody, or you're taking care of someone who maybe falls a lot, maybe they have a seizure disorder, and you're calling 911, those EMTs really want to honor the wishes of the patient as well. So they will know if this patient stops breathing, if they lose their pulse, do we do CPR or do we just help them stay comfortable and call for other help? So if the EMTs don't see that and someone does stop breathing or loses their pulse, they are mandated to do CPR. So again, if you know that, no, I don't want to go through the trauma of CPR, please just let me go naturally. That's an important piece of information. Your doctor does have those in their office, or if a patient goes to a nursing home, the social worker may go over it. In the hospital setting, it's the social worker. A lot of times palliative care will have that goals of care conversation. And so that's how you can obtain getting one. I know that assisted livings and long-term care, they will all have one. And it's really nice to know where that is, because sometimes the staff don't know where it is and they'll call 911 and EMTs will do everything they can to help someone maybe who is down and unresponsive. But if it's not the wish of the patient, they're still obligated to do so.
So we have time for one or two more questions. So if there's something that's been on your mind, but you're wondering whether to ask it, go ahead and raise your hand.
I asked one already, is that okay? This is for April. Diagnosis. When did you know it was time to test, and what was the testing that was done?
It was about, well, now it's been about 20 years ago. I noticed a difference in my thinking, and so they thought I was too young, of course, like I said. And so it took about 15 to get there to be able to do my, to do the long test that we have to do for this. And then when I went to Mayo, they did the final thing was a lumbar puncture. And that showed what they were looking for. So it took quite a while, and I just stuck with it. And I forget what else you asked me. Sorry, you asked me one other thing in there.
When did you know when to test?
When I was working, like I said, I was always a numbers person in accounting, and I worked with those every day, and I would sit and look at them, and I couldn't figure out how to add them. Or I couldn't figure out, how would you get a percentage of this particular item, or, like that. It was really odd, and I would look at them and I'd be like, why can't I figure this out? And I would try to go in and look in Google, how do you multiply numbers? Oh, geez. That's hard because it's just, well, duh, how to do that. And so, you put the times symbol there and you have it written down, but that still doesn't get you anywhere. So, I just went from there. I told my husband after I told the doctor, so he didn't notice anything. And I felt I was forgetting things. I was misplacing a few things. Not to the point, we all misplace things, not to the point where I was, finding them in weird spots. That's a real dead giveaway that you might misplace your car keys and they're in the freezer or something like that. I wasn't doing that blatant, but I was misplacing things. And so, but I still drive. I don't work anymore, but I still drive. And, it's kind of calmed down a little bit because now I'm on medication. So it is a good thing to get checked because then you can be put on medicine. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But, it's something you can try. So, and you can learn other little tricks to to help yourself, like the notebook and the, things like that you always have with you. Or a person that you always tell this one thing to, or, something like that. So does that answer your question?
And having that support network. April has built herself a great support network. She's a support to other people, but she has also a great support network. Any other questions? All right.
This is for Rebecca. Does your company offer palliative care? And could you talk about palliative care, what that is?
Yes, for palliative care, that can be for anyone who's maybe having chronic symptoms from a disease or diagnosis. You do not have to be limited for your age. Usually it's through a hospital network. So I know the University Hospital, Mercy, and Unity Point all have palliative care. Most of them have an outpatient clinic. And really they look at the full mind, body, and spirit to think of ways to manage, for example, chronic pain. Maybe a patient has Parkinson's and they want to help manage the pain that they experience with those symptoms. And for palliative care, it's usually paid by insurance, medical, health insurance. Cut down on me. But for hospice is, we don't have our own palliative team for hospice. And what we would do is just maybe meet with someone, talk about what they have going on for symptoms and a diagnosis, and then follow them along as a resource, even if they're not quite ready to go on to hospice. That way they know what to expect, and they can call us late day. They can call us if they're not wanting to go into the hospital, if their symptoms become too bad, but maybe they're just not ready. For example, if a patient's doing cancer treatments, but they don't want to continue, they can call us and get on hospice. So we just follow them along their journey until they're ready. And I don't know if any other hospices offer palliative, but usually palliative teams will refer to hospice when they feel that that patient might be needing that level of care. And again, if a patient's symptoms are well managed and they don't see a change within the benefit periods that we check on throughout hospice, which is 2 90-day periods and then every 60 days, that patient has to continue to qualify. Otherwise, Medicare will not cover them as appropriate for hospice. So you might hear people are discharged for an extended prognosis or they graduate. So that's what that looks like. But you can talk to anyone in hospice just to kind of get more knowledge about what to expect for any disease process and what they would help manage.
Thank you for that. So did everybody learn something new today? Something to take away? So let's thank our panelists. Thank you so much. They're going to be at the back of the room for any questions or maybe some individual personal questions that you wanted to ask that you didn't want to ask in front of everyone. So they'll be at the back of the room here. I'll let them go ahead and get set up and I'll go over a few items with you. So my invitation to everyone here is to do something by the end of the week, to take one step, whether that's to look into your power of attorney, to look into your advance directive, one step towards being an advocate for yourself, and one step towards being an advocate for someone else. So maybe you have a friend and you offer to be a strong voice for them, to go with them to doctor's appointments, to just be a second person there, because it doesn't matter what your age is. When you're at these appointments, it's sometimes overwhelming and you don't hear everything. You miss things. So having a second person there, regardless of your age, I think is great. So a few things we have going. Next month we are moving. So we've kind of outgrown our space. This is one of our smaller groups. And so we're going to be moving to Elm Crest Country Club starting next month. Next month's seminar is Selling the House as Is. And that will be at, I apologize. I did not change this slide, guys. I changed it on your invitation on your printed one. So I'm sorry, I did not change it. It will be at Elm Crest Country Club. I thought I changed that.